Well, hey everyone, my name is Nathan Jones, and if you're new here, welcome. I like to talk about all things movies, specifically Blu-rays, and today is a special one because we are finally finishing up the 100 years of movie series. And I thought this was going to be a perfect way to end the year as well because we're talking to my good friend Chris Buie, who is also the first person who did my film journey series. All those, how long ago was that?
Feel like that was over a year ago now.
It was over a year ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Chris Buie is one of my oldest friends on the platform. Also one of my youngest friends. I couldn't think of anyone better to talk about this decade with because I mean, honestly, I feel like you and I both, grew into this space during this time period. And so a lot of our memories involving film, I feel like are in the 2010s. And so if anyone's unfamiliar with this film series, what we've been doing is we've been doing a decade long 100 years of movies. So we've been going from the 1920s all the way up to now. So now we're in the 2010s because it's been a whole year for that. But we've had guests on here talking about each decade and what our favorite films from them are. And so today we're going to talk about some honorable mentions first, and then we're going to jump into our five films that we want to represent as our favorites for this decade, or maybe not necessarily favorites, just things that we want to talk about. And then we're also going to throw in a little documentary in there as well, something new I wanted to try out because I just couldn't not talk about this. So Chris, what do you think about the 2010s? What are some of your favorite things about it?
I mean, it's an interesting decade for me because I was 10 years old in 2010 and now I'm 22 years old. So it's pretty crazy how I basically came of age during the decade, and there's a lot of coming of age movies as well that came out. But it's basically where I developed all my taste for movies and love for the medium. So it's really cool that I get to come on for this decade. And it also is cool how it came full circle because, like you mentioned, I was the first one on the Film Journey series. So it's just interesting how the world works sometimes. But I am excited to talk about a lot of these movies because some of them are my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know about you, but these are the years that I've watched the most movies because I also kind of came into my love of appreciation for film during this time period. So the list is just ongoing and forever. And so I'm like, how do I dwindle this down?
Yeah,
So to speak, and have to kind of ignore some other films, even though I love them because I was looking at, I don't, we might mention this, but I was looking at the years specifically and I was like 2017, that might be one of my favorite years of film ever. There's so many things there that I loved, but I'm sure you've noticed some of those patterns too yourself, but.
Oh yeah. 2010 is, I think it's arguably the greatest year for movies ever. That's a hot take. I don't know. I think I talked about that on a podcast with Chris Hurtado once, but
oh, no.
yeah. I love 2010 and the whole decade.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great decade. So let's actually start off with some of our honorable mentions. I think Chris and I are going to go back and forth, just talking about maybe, I think, about 10 movies-ish, kind of just things that we wanted to cover, but maybe just a couple thoughts on them. So what's your first honorable mention?
My first honorable mention is Get Out. I think this movie is fantastic. Probably should have won Best Picture. It's a great directorial debut for Jordan Peele, and it's one that I find myself wanting to revisit every other year. It's just a very relevant thriller horror movie, and I love it. It's a great movie.
Yeah, I was stuck between Us and that movie, thinking about it. I was like, which one do I need to talk about? Because they're both so good, and Get Out really put Jordan Peele on the map. So I love that movie.
Oh yeah,
so I definitely thought about that movie too. My first film that I'll do is Alex Garland's Annihilation. So I absolutely love this science fiction horror film. It's got Natalie Portman and Oscar Isaac in it, among a plethora of really fantastic female actresses. And yeah, it's just it's a crazy sci-fi concept that's actually horrifying too. I remember my theater experience. It's just such a enveloping world. It's just a really big world building film, and it has a ton of really great things about it. So I highly recommend Annihilation.
I'll have to add that one to the list because I missed that one.
Awesome.
Yeah. My next honorable mention is another directorial debut, and that's mid-90s, an A24 movie directed by Jonah Hill. And this is like one of just the better coming of age movies I've seen. It's only like an hour and 20 minutes. But it's just about these group of kids that are like skaters in the Los Angeles area. And it's just about like their trials and tribulations growing up in life and like the struggles of having like an older brother and like romantic relationships. It's a very sweet movie. I think it's fairly relatable at times. And it's a great like debut for Jonah Hill. I hope we get more movies like this from him. I'm not sure if we will, because I know that he's kind of back into acting now, but I really hope that he keeps at it when it comes to directing.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, I remember going to the theater for that one.
Yeah.
I remember, well, I mean, specifically, we mentioned Chris already, but with Chris Hurtado, because he's from Rockford, and I know it's more about LA culture, but skating culture was huge in Chicago and also in Los Angeles and in the California area too, just back in the 90s. And so it's really cool to see Jonah Hill tap into something that really hasn't kind of been forgotten about a little bit. Like skating culture has not really been as big as it was then. So, but like you said, it's got a lot of things about it. It's a coming of age film. Like it's got romance and also just like trying to grow up in this difficult time. So it's a fun movie. I love it. My next film is probably my Tarantino pick of the decade. It's a weird one for a lot of people, but it's the one that I really appreciate, especially as I've gotten older. But it is The Hateful Eight, and this is one of my favorite films because I love a good slow burn. I love a good drama that's all taking place kind of in one location. It's kind of one of my things that I enjoy the most. It's like acting 101. It's like a theater. It's like a production. And this has just got an incredible cast, of course. I mean, Sam Jackson, Kurt Russell, Channing Tatum, of course, too. Jennifer Jason Leigh. I can just keep going on. Walter Goggins, Tim Roth, Mads Mikkelsen, Michael Madsen, my bad. He's not in that movie. Bruce Dern, etc. But yes, Hateful Eight. Love this movie. I had to choose this one. Also, a Ennio Morricone score. Can't not think about that.
That's an immaculate score, and I'm glad that he got the classic Western composer.
Yeah, me too.
Great pick. Yeah, I like that movie a lot. It's not one of my like absolute favorite Tarantino movies, but it's definitely like the slowest Tarantino movie in my opinion. But it does have a nice payoff in the end. And it's funny how Channing Tatum had this trend of popping up in like every 2010s movie for like 2 seconds. He's like, I can think of 3 off the top of my head.
It's funny you say pop up because that's literally what he does in this.
Yeah, truth. Yeah. My next honorable mention is actually a comedy movie that I have talked about on your channel before. The Other Guys.
Look, we did it. We did it.
Yes, that movie is absolutely hilarious. It is one of the most rewatchable comedies. I love showing this to my friends for the first time because I feel like it goes under the radar for a lot of people. But it's safe to say this is probably one of my most quoted comedy movies. It's just like I'll be like saying goodbye to my friends and I'll be like, "Good night, Sheila." And I'll just like keep walking. Yeah, it's so funny. Oh man. And it ages like fine wine. Like the jokes just get better on rewatch. And it's not even rated R. That's the crazy thing. It's still hilarious and it's rated PG-13.
I mean, you can't. That movie is like a one of a kind thing. Like it's weird because Will Ferrell and Mark Wahlberg are not necessarily playing themselves, but they're kind of doing the well, I don't know how to describe it, but I mean it's just so funny, and there's so many. Like you said, it's one of the most quoted movies of my life as well because I quote nonstop, especially a lot of Michael Keaton parts of that movie.
He's hilarious. He's like so slept on. Everyone forgets about how funny he is in that.
Yeah, I do the whisper thing a lot. Hey, what's going on? Yeah, it's just.
I love that.
I love that movie. Well, you stole mine, so keep going with your next one.
Yeah. So next for me is another A24 movie, The Disaster Artist. I love this movie. It's about the making. It's like basically a biopic, actually, of Tommy Wiseau and how like he made The Room. I think James Franco was Oscar worthy in it personally. I know that there were some personal things kind of kept him from being in the conversation of getting a nomination that year, but his performance is still great. And this movie is like really hilarious, but at the same time, it makes you kind of feel for Tommy Wiseau. As it shows like it really kind of paints him as like just a dude trying to make it in LA, which a lot of people have dreams and aspirations. It's heartfelt though. In the end, there's a scene where he's like watching it in the theater, the movie, and everyone's like laughing at him. But then at the end, it's kind of like you still made something that's like iconic. So I always thought the message behind that was touching.
Yeah, I like that way it balances like
Yeah.
that story. Like obviously it's mostly a comedy, right?
Hmm.
Because if anyone who's watching this has seen The Room, you know about it. And fun fact about that movie is I actually did a screen reading with Greg Sestero. Um,
Wow.
yeah, so of all things, because he came to the Alamo out here at Alamo Draft House and was
Hmm.
doing a double feature of The Room and Disaster Artist when it was coming out. So I was able to meet him and take a picture. It was a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
That's the most famous person I've met. So
Yeah.
Greg Sestero, if you're watching this, love you, man. So my next movie is another comedy that is a slept on one. I feel like when this came out, nobody really watched it, but my mutual friends actually showed me this, and I'm talking about Popstar.
Mm.
This is literally one of another, just like the other guys. It's like one of the most quoted movies I've quoted in the last like 4 or 5 years, and I watched this like 4 or 5 years ago for the first time, and I love showing this movie to people because it is just so, anything that had any of the Lonely Island guys in it, I love it. So but yeah, this is just like them, like to the 11th degree. They know exactly what they're doing, and just kind of tapping into how insane pop stardom is, and how
Yeah.
silly it is. But it's just so funny. Yeah, I love that movie.
I am ashamed to say I have not seen that because I love The Lonely Island. I listen to like all their albums, big fan, and my friends are like, you got to watch it. And it's been like near the top of my watch list for a while. I've just never sat down and watched it. I know I would love it. I would love the movie. I just got to give it a chance.
Just throwing in on a day that you're like, I'm not feeling much today, so like I'll
Yeah.
throw in Popstar. It'll like completely 180 that. So
Yeah.
really
Yeah. The next honorable mention I have is actually my favorite James Bond movie, and that is Skyfall.
almost
Yeah,
talking about
this
that.
is
Yeah.
yeah, Skyfall is I rewatched it before No Time to Die. It solidified itself as my favorite Bond movie, and I remember seeing this one in theaters. The reason I love it is it kind of goes against the Craig Bond formula. Like early on, when obviously he kind of like fake dies, it takes him out of the picture, and then I just love the story from there. It's got the best Bond song by far, in my opinion, with Adele's
Yeah.
Skyfall. That's just
It's a great
beautiful.
song.
Javier Bardem, a really, I'd say, solid Bond villain, and the action as well. It's just riveting. I think that it's a movie that should be seen on the big screen. I'm very fortunate I got to see it in theaters. I was like 12 or 13. But yeah, it's my favorite Bond movie for sure.
Yeah, I that year in particular, 2012 was another incredible year for movies, and I feel like Skyfall was definitely one of the pinnacles of that year, because I grew up with James Bond. I had the GoldenEye 64 game, so I watched a lot of the Pierce Brosnan movies, and then I grew up watching the VHSs of Sean Connery and Roger Moore and etc. But then when Casino Royale came out, which is one of my favorite Bonds ever,
Yeah.
that, and then when Skyfall came out, I was like, this is another classic from Craig. I just think that those two in particular, and even this last one, those are like my favorite Craig films and some of my favorite Bond films. And so Skyfall, like you said, got a great cast, got a great song, it's got a great locale. It's just a beautiful movie, and I love it too. So
Yeah.
my next honorable mention is a French film. It is one from the Criterion Collection that came out in 2019, so not that long ago, but it is Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This is a really fantastic film, romance of sorts, of two women who one of them is getting their portrait taken and painted, and it's very stubborn and doesn't want anyone to really paint her, but this other woman who's painting her kind of falls in love with her, and it's about their relationship, and it's kind of more of it's a very subtle movie. It's very it's all in the nonverbals, and I just think it's one of the best movies of the decade for sure, and I definitely wanted to share it. But if anyone's not seen this, Portrait of a Lady on Fire, it's got a lot of great emotions to it, and I think everyone should watch it. So
I've heard great things about that one. I have to check it out. I missed it.
it's fantastic.
Next for me, and it hurt to put all of these not in the top five actually, is La La Land, a movie that is very near and dear to my heart. I saw it with my girlfriend like the week or two after we started dating, and we're still dating to this day. So we kind of like quote it and sing the songs all the time. But just the message about like obstacles in life, especially for like an artist or someone who's dream chasing, how like choosing your true love or your true career love, like how those can kind of intertwine in like you have to choose one or the other. I thought it was very powerful. And the final like shots of that movie, chilling.
I mean, it's weird. It actually, this kind of parallels with Portrait of a Lady on Fire a little bit with like the final scene. It's kind of, I'm not trying to give anything away, but you can tell what the real heart of both of these movies are based on those final, like that final shot. And I love that. So I love that movie. It was actually one of the first, it was the musical that made me rethink musicals. That's what I'll say, because I wasn't a big musical fan until I saw La La Land, and I was like, you know what, this is actually a really compelling drama, like in romance and story.
Absolutely.
And the music added to it, and it was the music that wasn't over the top. It was perfect for it. So I really loved it, and I love the performances, of course. So I love that movie, and I need to rewatch it soon.
Yeah, it's worth the rewatch every year. It's hard like finding time sometimes.
Yeah, well, that's a whole thing we could talk about, like rewatching.
Oh, yeah.
God, the more we watch, it's like, oh, I don't have time for that anymore.
Exactly.
Speaking of things I rewatch annually, actually, this would go in my top 5, but I feel like that was too obvious. But it is my favorite horror movie of the decade, and I'm talking about The Witch. This is a movie I've talked about endlessly with a lot of my friends, but Anna Taylor-Joy, this is one of her first roles. I don't know if it is her first role, but one of them. But Robert Eggers does another. It's an A24 film. It's just it's folk horror done right. It's a nice New England tale of witchcraft and about a family who really unravels based on hysteria and belief. And yeah, it's an incredible film. It's very atmospheric. It's not for everybody. Not everyone loves it, but it was perfect. I remember exactly where I was in theaters when I saw it. So it was a perfect film for me. And so ever since, I've been, singing about Black Phillip all the time.
Yeah, I know you're a big fan of that. Don't you have like the Funko Pop? Is it in the back right corner right now?
There he is right there.
Yep. Yeah. I know you've been a big fan of that one for a while. So yeah, very cool. My next one is a movie that I also think should have won Best Picture, and that is A Star Is Born with Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga. I mean, I was just blown away by this movie. It was directorial debut for Bradley Cooper. He didn't get nominated for an Oscar for some reason for directing. I was still upset about that, but I know this is like the 4th version of the movie, but it's the first version of the movie that I saw, and it just really resonated with me. I love a good like romantic kind of tragedy story that shows Bradley Cooper's character going through it. I mean, he's got like depression at times, and seeing how a new flame is coming up in Lady Gaga, who might be taking the spotlight from him. There's just a lot to dive into in this movie. It's very well acted. The music is awesome too. I listen to that soundtrack quite a bit. I think it's easily one of the best of the decade, in my opinion, of last decade.
Yeah, I love that movie, and just like you, that was the first time I had seen this version. I hadn't seen the other 3 beforehand, and I have 2 of them. I still haven't even seen them, but this is the one that I know, and I really loved Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper in this, and I thought this really showed me that Lady Gaga can really act, and yeah, I was just kind of blown away by this drama, and didn't know what to expect. And that was definitely one of my favorites that year to see.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Yeah. Next is a film that I've actually revisited a lot. It's the movie that I probably cried the most for. I don't know why, but it is Luca Guadagnino's Call Me By Your Name with Timothée Chalamet and Armie Hammer. Also Michael Stolberg. But this is based on a book, I read the book afterwards, but this is a movie about a summer romance or a fling between two guys. I think they are in Italy or Greece, one of those places. I'm escaping it. It's one of my favorite movies, and I don't even know where they're at. But anyway, it's about their kind of coming of age, especially for Timothée Chalamet. He is trying to figure out more about himself, and he just sees this older dude and kind of just has an awakening with him, and kind of finds himself a little bit. enchanted by this. And this is just, it's a relatable in the sense that like I feel like a lot of us have had like flings or romances or even like summer things going on where that was everything in the world. And then, you know, once that summer ended or once that season ended or whatever, like it comes crashing back to reality, but it impacted you enough to where you understand what that meant for you. And so I don't know, it's just it's got a beautiful score. Sufjan Stevens does a really great job, you know, with the score, and it's just it's a beautiful film. And if I need a good cry and a good romance film, I'll watch Call Me by Your Name.
If I'm being honest, I thought that was going to be your number one pick for some reason, because I know you've talked highly of it before. So
it's fantastic.
I'm shocked it didn't make the top 5.
Yeah, well, I mean, I went with the top 5 is kind of like with things that aren't necessarily talked about as much, but you know,
fair. Yeah. Next for me is a movie that I know it's become synonymous with like the finance bro and the film bro
I know movement, where this is going.
But I still think it's a Scorsese epic, in my opinion. The Wolf of Wall Street. I mean, this is one of the most like just fun, satirical, rewatchable movies. I think Leo should have won the Oscar. It's tough, you know. It's hard to talk about that year because there's so many great actors, but I still think that's probably Leo's best performance. But even putting that aside, this is one of the most fast-paced movies I've ever seen. It's 3 hours, but it genuinely feels like about an hour 45. Exactly. It's so damn interesting seeing the story play out, and it's just like batshit crazy. Like Scorsese just goes for it at times, and it's just insane that he actually directed that movie. I know it's different from his mobster movies from like the 70s, 80s, and 90s, but it's a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And it's the most rewatchable three-hour movie I'd probably say that I can think of.
I couldn't argue with that. I mean, yeah, it's I love the I love the scene where he's coming out of the car on the Quaaludes.
Man,
them tracking that out. That movie's I remember that was a really positive theater experience for me. I remember watching it with some friends. They didn't like it as much, and I was like, "What? Like this was so much fun! Like this was this was one of the most fun films I had seen in theaters, and it was just it was bizarre to me, but that's a very fun film, and I love it.
Oh yeah, it's a blast.
One of my first steelbooks is over there across the bay at the Target steelbook.
I always wanted that steelbook. It's yellow. It's got the picture of him like
he's just doing
that. Yeah.
It's good. My next is a film that actually another film that got me into this director. I didn't really care for him beforehand, but I'm talking about Wes Anderson, and I'm talking about Grand Budapest Hotel. This movie, Ralph Fiennes, he's the lead in this movie, and it just takes it off from there. And it's just such this is a batshit crazy movie because this is the most Wes Anderson too, because Wes Anderson is really known for his colors, his compositions, how he frames his shots. Everything's very symmetrical and very neat and tidy and quaint. And that's just kind of what Wes Anderson does. And this is the movie that like I finally it clicked in my head how much fun a Wes Anderson movie can be. And Grand Budapest Hotel is definitely my favorite Wes Anderson movie, and is one that I can rewatch over and over again. And when the Criterion put this out, I'm like, I have to get this edition because it's just so much fun, and it's got pink and I don't know if you can see pink and blue, and it's a very, very colorful film. But that's the movie that changed my mind on Wes Anderson.
Yeah, that's actually the first Wes Anderson movie I saw, and I had a blast with it. I haven't explored more of his work. I saw The French Dispatch, which came out this year, but I really do like Grand Budapest. It's a lot of fun, and Ralph Fiennes is like comedic genius in that movie in a weird way. That movie's surprisingly funny. So yeah, I had a good time with it. My next honorable mention is actually the last one I have. It's Cheating, and it's 2 movies. I didn't want to put them in the top 5. I view it as one. I'm just gonna have to plug Marvel. I'm on here, okay? Infinity War and Endgame. Oh, are we doing this?
Yeah, we're doing this.
That is awesome, dude.
Yeah,
that is awesome. I didn't want to put him in the top 5, but like, come on, it is the epic conclusion of my childhood, pretty much. Like 2008 was Iron Man, and then it all came full circle with this. I couldn't think of a better conclusion. I still love Marvel, and I'm watching all the new stuff, but in a sense, this kind of feels like the end to me in a way. So it's perfectly done. And I'm not even going to talk about the plot or the characters, because you all know it's just the cinematic event of our lives for now. No Way Home comes out soon, but for now.
Go watch that. Yeah. So when
Yeah.
I'm putting this up, I will say No Way Home will be out, so go watch that.
Oh, okay. Our minds will have been blown, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully. Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, there's what can you say about it? You're right. I mean, this is a culmination of so many things, and I think that's the reason why the payoff is so it means so much. And it's the first time in history where something like this has happened, and it's perfect, and I love it. And I grew up with a lot of this stuff too, because I mean, this is when I was in Iron Man in 2008. I was kind of developing my film tastes and stuff, and I've never quit these types of films. I've always had fun with them, and I think the Avengers and Endgame and Infinity War, just perfect. So
yeah,
love those movies. I guess since we're there, I'll say my last movie here, my honorable mention, is a film that I never thought that I was going to see, but I was told to watch this movie, and I hadn't seen the first, so I'm like, okay, I got to go watch the first and then I'll watch the second. And I fell in love with both. And I'm talking about Paddington 2. Necessarily perfect. This is just a perfect film. It's just about Paddington Bear, which I grew up with Winnie the Pooh. I never really grew up with Paddington, but I know both bears were highly influential, especially for mostly people in the UK growing up, because these are UK products. But just bears, like stuffed bears, and it's just the raincoat and the hat was Paddington. These are just these are the films that I feel like have the most heart, and it just surprises me to this day that things like this aren't like made as much, because I feel like this is like a one of a kind thing, and it's also, I feel like, underrated. It's not stuff that's talked about too often. So also big shout out to Hugh Grant here in this movie. He's a great villain, and he's been playing some good villains lately. So I'm excited to see him in more of those kind of roles. But Paddington 2.
Yeah, he's great in The Gentleman, the Guy Ritchie movie. Yeah, he's really good in that one. Yeah.
Well, those are all our honorable mentions, and so now I think it's time for us to get to to the weeds of the things that we want to talk about. Our 5 films that are representing for the 2010s. So what is your first choice?
My first choice is going to be my sports movie, and one of my favorite sports movies of all time, and that is Moneyball.
Yeah,
Moneyball. I love this movie so much for various reasons, but the main reason being Aaron Sorkin's ability to just write arguably the best scripts ever. And I think this is one of his best. He takes a subject in baseball, which not a lot of people love. I grew up playing it. I liked baseball cards, but it kind of bores me nowadays. It's a very slow paced game. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of technicalities that are kind of hard to get on board with. But this takes the sport of baseball. It looks at it through a statistical lens and like a behind the scenes sports management lens, which is something that not a lot of sports movies do, and he makes it so comprehensible. Like, I love the scene where Jonah Hill's character is explaining like getting on base and how there's like 20 dudes out there they can assemble to make like a championship team. It's not about the players; it's about like their ability to hit the ball and get on base. And Billy Beane, as well as the characters, they flesh him out so well, especially with Brad Pitt's performance. But all that comes together to just make a great sports tale that also deals with humanity, and like Brad Pitt's relationship with his daughter is like the heart and soul, in my opinion, especially near the end of the film. There's chilling moments like the win streak sequence that ends with Scott Hatterberg hitting the homer, and then like the score starts coming in slowly and everyone gets chills, and they kind of insert some of the real life footage too. It's a perfect sports movie pretty much in my eyes, and well worth the watch. Even if you're not a baseball fan, there's a lot to love with Moneyball.
Yeah, I don't know if many people know this, but Oakland's actually my favorite baseball team. For one of the reasons it being Moneyball, but also another reason being that growing up, I was around a lot of baseball memorabilia. I'm from Missouri, so you can Kansas City Royals or St. Louis Cardinals for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Here. But the Oakland A's used to be the Kansas City A's. And so my dad, growing up, always had, Oakland and Kansas City athletic gear, which is really crazy. And I just always remembered that. And then when Moneyball came out, it just solidified it. I'm like, yep, if I'm ever going to watch baseball, I want to support the A's. I don't know why, but that's one of the things that I also, we'll talk about sports in a little bit. But like the reason that I enjoy a lot of the sports is I don't necessarily gravitate towards an individual or like a superstar or whatever that is. I like to gravitate towards teams. And Moneyball, exactly how are you describing, is like, how do we get a group of people who not necessarily are like big names or anything, but getting them together to do this one thing and to win a championship? I think that's the heart and soul of like the reason why I like sports, is like I like to see the camaraderie and like how they can produce that together. And Moneyball is fantastic for that. So
absolutely.
Great pick.
Thank you.
So my first pick is a movie that this came out around the same time as another movie that covered this subject, directed by Adam McKay, though. But I want to talk about 99 Homes with Michael Shannon and Andrew Garfield. This is actually one of my favorite Andrew Garfield performances. And Michael Shannon is also here and just fantastic, as well as just this slimy asshole who he plays in a lot of movies. But 99 Homes is really about like the housing crisis that happened in the late 2000s, early 2010s. And, with this movie in particular, they were talking about the housing crisis and how it happened. And this is just about like one of the smaller towns. And Michael Shannon really just, he's one of those sharks that are like kind of taking advantage of people and, like buying it from under them and like really kind of ripping them off. And Andrew Garfield is actually one of the tenants that he rips off, at least the family. But then Andrew Garfield eventually starts working for him and starts learning these tricks and traits. And, you kind of see a breakdown of his character, and like he's learning like how to take advantage of people, but also learning about himself and seeing if this is right or not. But this is a movie that it's never left my mind. There's really strong performances, both by Michael Shannon and Andrew Garfield, and also Laura Dern's in this as well, and I love her. And anytime I can see her in any movie, it's a fantastic ride. So, but yeah, it's a movie that I wanted more people to know about. I feel like it's a movie that's not really thought about that often. And it's also about, once again, kind of like Moneyball, it's about a subject that's not necessarily exciting, the housing crisis, but it's compelling enough. It's a drama that's compelling enough to where people can be interested and they can learn about it through these things. Right. And I think that's what's the beauty of something like Moneyball or something like this, where it's like something that's not super sexy. It's like you can learn about it through these movies, even if it is a little bit Hollywoodized, but still a good time. And well worth the watch.
I haven't seen that one, but it is on my list because I'm trying to watch every Andrew Garfield movie eventually, just because maybe. And Tick Tick Boom, I love Tick Tick Boom. That's one of maybe my favorite movie of the year, actually. But yeah, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah.
But
what's your second pick?
My next pick is a Pixar movie because I had to have a good old animated film on here. It's my favorite Pixar movie. I don't know if it will ever be topped. Toy Story 3. Just a 2010 banger. I mean, a lot of my movies are actually from like the early parts of the decade, I just realized, but this is the ending to Toy Story for me. Like Toy Story 4, I get it's kind of controversial. I don't really care for it. This is the true end.
I'm the same way.
This is like the true end of Toy Story for me. And I could sit here and gush about Lotso and all these different things. When it comes down to it, the final 10 minutes of the movie where Andy is playing with the toys one last time it's heartbreaking, and it's just perfect. It's very relatable to me when I rewatch it. It's like moving on. I graduated high school, I watched this movie, moving on to the next chapter of life. I'm about to graduate college, going to the next chapter of life. That's what the movie is like. It's synonymous with that, is moving on in life and finding the next chapter. So I just think it's perfection, and Pixar really put on the heartstrings with this one. For a moment, we really thought they were going to kill the toys. Everyone always talks about that. I mean, they might have. They weren't going to, but it's still fun to think of like this parallel universe where they might have killed all the toys and just ended it there. But it's a perfect Pixar movie, and I think this is the top tier Pixar. Yeah,
I couldn't disagree more. I mean, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I was like, wait, what?
Controversy. No, controversy is Toy Story 4. Why did it need me? I mean, like, it's fine. Like, I like it, but it's not anything I like. Just end it on 3 because that's the perfect ending, right?
Exactly.
Money. That's why.
Yep.
Yeah, I love that, and I will another honorable slip in and a little honorable mention because I haven't mentioned Disney Pixar, but I like to little represent my favorite of the decade is Coco. I love that movie. So
great pick.
But anyway,
great pick.
Disney Pixar, you can't go wrong with them, right?
Oof, yeah.
Let's go into my second one, which is actually a very personal film for me. It's actually a film I've only seen once because it is that impactful. And kind of going into it, it's hard to like explain why it's so impactful for me. But I'm talking about A Ghost Story with Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. And the reason this is kind of such a big deal to me is around this time that this movie came out, I realized that one of the jobs that I worked at, I used to work at a record store here where I live, is going away. And I was in, the last remnant of that particular space. And this movie is really just involved about like thinking about space, and then also like the memories that are attached to that space that you have with other people or with objects or whatever it is. And really it's about that rumination of like, how do you get over grief? Like how do you cope with the loss of something? It doesn't have to necessarily be a person, which Casey Affleck at the very beginning of this movie, Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck are married. Casey Affleck dies, and he comes back as this really like Beetlejuice, Scooby-Doo looking ghost with a sheet on his head. But he's there in the background in a lot of these shots of this movie. It's a very long. It feels like a long film, but it's really about you're there sitting with that grief. You're there sitting with that, and it's something that I felt really strongly because I like I said, I had those real life moments in my own life. And when I watched this, it just like waved over me and I just couldn't stop crying. So it's a movie, like I said, I've only seen it once because it gets me emotional and I can't think about it too much, but I have the poster over there on the wall. It's a movie that I have a lot of strong feelings for, but it's a movie that I think everyone should watch at least once and get their thoughts on it. But yeah, A Ghost Story. Love this movie, and also love Rooney Mara and Casey Affleck. I think Casey Affleck's my favorite of the Affleck brothers, just personally. I just want to say that to everyone else out there. But
yeah, fair. My next pick is my Tarantino pick, actually, and it's easily over time. Actually, it's probably become my favorite Tarantino movie, which is like I'm pretty sure that's a hot topic. But Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. And I think it honestly has to do with the fact that Leo and Brad Pitt are just starring in a movie together. That's just awesome to me. But their characters are badass and cool. Just seeing a day in the life in Hollywood is awesome. And like the last 30 minutes of this movie, just nuts. It's my theater. I saw it opening night when it came out, and they were just roaring with laughter. It was crazy cool. Those people, I like how he rewrote history there at the end. And let's talk about that soundtrack. I think it's one of the better soundtracks. Like I remember listening to it all summer 2019. It's a banger, and it's one of the coolest movies I've ever seen. That's why it's on the list. It's just, damn, that movie's cool. And I have the poster in my room too. It's like an ode to classic Hollywood. I love everything about that movie. I would watch the 20-hour cut. I know that was a fake rumor, but I would watch like a 20-hour cut of that movie.
20-hour cut.
Yeah, I would. And I have the book. I just have to read it. I actually have it. I just haven't read it yet.
I haven't read it either. But that's a great movie. And I mean, honestly, it's weird because like Tarantino, I mean, obviously people love him or hate him, but at the end of the day, the reason I love him is because he cares so much about the things that like made the movies that we like so great. And all those homages, especially with this movie. I mean, he has a good understanding of that time period. He was around that time period. Yeah. And, even if it's revisionist, who cares? Like, that's what's so fun about it, right? It's its own interpretation of it. And that's what's so fun about it. And I love that. Love that aspect about him and his films. And yeah, I love that movie. And I want to get, I wish I had the special edition. But it's whatever. But I'll get it eventually. Hopefully one day. My next choice is a movie. We talked a little bit about him when we talked about Skyfall, but I want to talk about his Danish film that he made, Mads Mikkelsen, talking about The Hunt. This is a really fantastic 2012 film about just rumors in a town where false rumors can really ruin somebody. And that's not necessarily like what the movie's message is about. It's just more or less just kind of a really compelling drama. I mean, I guess this, I mean, if you would compare a film that was around the same time, like Gone Girl, is something similar but very different. But this is a very Danish film, right? Because you're seeing a lot of different cultural things going on here in this movie as well. But it's just a really compelling film, and like this was this movie and Skyfall, and then a few other, like Hannibal in particular, like really like zoned in on me. And like Mads Mikkelsen's one of the best actors I've seen in a long, long time, and I just really love his work, and I love everything he's been in. I really loved Another Round that he put out last year. Really fun film about him being a teacher. He's really good as a teacher, you know, and as a teacher myself, I can kind of relate to it a little bit. But yeah, The Hunt, really fantastic film. I highly recommend it for people if they haven't seen it before. And it was one of the first, I want to say it's one of the first like foreign language films that like really kind of got out. I explored a little bit further. So still holds a place in my heart. You want to take a little slight break to do our documentary?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right. Well, what is
your
documentary? First? Yeah.
I was between two, but I settled on one that shout out to my friend Ryan from Nerdy Blurb TV. He actually introduced me to this one. It's called Score, a film music documentary, and it came out in 2014, I want to say. And it's only about an hour and a half long, and it's a deep dive into like musical scores for films. But as someone who really appreciates musical scores, I view them as like a character in the movie. It gives us some really insightful like looks into some of the most iconic scores of all time. Like the coolest part of this documentary is there's a scene where they're talking about Spielberg and John Williams, and they're like how they work together as a duo. And John Williams is sitting on the piano, and this is for E.T., and he's literally playing notes, and Spielberg's sitting right there on the piano. He's like, Spielberg obviously doesn't understand like the like language of music. I mean, I don't even, because I'm not a music guy, but he's like, wait, go back, play that note a little higher. And that's how he kind of like got the iconic composition for E.T. Yeah. So that was cool. And then it kind of dives into like Hans Zimmer and all these different things. It was just a really insightful look at musical scores and how impactful they are. And I'm a sucker for a good score. So I had a blast watching this one, and I highly recommend it to anyone out there, because if you love musical scores, you're gonna enjoy this one.
I've never seen it or heard of it, so I'm
really
going to watch. Oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Isn't it weird? I'm definitely going to be watching that. So
well, it's fair to say I hadn't heard of it either. It's very like small scale, but it was a lot. Like it was good. It was good.
Yeah. So I'll just briefly mention when I was coming up with my documentary, because I thought about this maybe like last night before, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna add this into here, because I cannot not think about these movies, but in documentaries, and some of them are like series and stuff. So like, I mean, I had to think about like, what do I want to talk about? So real quick shout out to Mark Cousins for doing Story of Film and Women Make Film, highly influential film documentaries just about movies in general, and like the people who make them and the people behind them. And then also Dawson City Frozen Time, which is a good Bill Morrison documentary about lost films. And so it's really, really important that they found that in Canada, of all places, like frozen underneath a bunch of, so people should go watch those. But the documentary series of like the decade for me is one that you know very well about too. It really changed my mind on sports in general. But I'm talking about The Last Dance. There's no way that I would fall in love with sports the way I did based on this, because of this documentary. Really, I grew up watching Michael Jordan and watching at least the 1998 season. I remember watching bits and pieces of with my father, and just kind of really enjoying this aspect of sports. And so when this came out, and during the pandemic, right at the very beginning, it just kind of opened my eyes. Like, I'll watch this. Yeah, like I liked watching Michael Jordan growing up, but then it just like blew up, and like, I love basketball. And it's just one that I've rewatched multiple times. It's on Netflix. This is the Blu-ray edition, but it's just one that I cannot not forget about. And I mean, even though I know subsequently since, like, Scottie Pippen has been kind of like not liking his representation in this, and that's fair. I mean, it's about Michael Jordan, who is notoriously narcissistic and very me. But at the same time, like, it's about this dynasty, the Bulls dynasty, and like the rings that they won together, and that story between all the people involved with Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, of course, and you have Dennis Rodman and Steve Kerr and everyone involved. I mean, it's just such a phenomenal documentary. What are your thoughts on Last Dance?
I still haven't finished it, which is a bummer because I was really into it. I've seen, I think, four of them. I think the last one I watched was the Kobe one where he came in. So I've seen a good bit of it, and I was very interested in it. I just got sidetracked. I need to hop back on it and give it a full watch through because it was so riveting, especially that I think the first episode or the second one ends with like the tip off and then like the Bulls music playing. And I was just like, I was hype. I wanted to go right into the next one. So I definitely need to give it another shot.
Isn't that crazy about like modern like series and like it doesn't have to be about, I mean, that's the hook, right? They hook you at the end.
Yeah.
There's like, keep going. Like, yay, stop that. But
it's crazy.
I mean, it's good. So I just wanted to throw in those documentaries because they mean so much. And I'm really fascinated to check out that film score documentary. I guess let's talk about our last two choices. What's your fourth one?
So these are easily my top two movies of the 2010s, and it was hard to pick and choose. I think they're both they're both like in my top 10 all time, I want to say. You probably, if you know me or if you've heard me talk about it, you know what they are. You know one of them. Yeah. The next one is Whiplash. Whiplash
not quite
is
my tempo.
Not quite my tempo. Yeah. This is one of my more, just like the other guys, I quote this movie for comedy's sake just as much in a weird way. Like this movie's hilarious to me.
Comedy.
It's a very dark comedy. But J.K. Simmons' career best performance, I don't think he'll ever top it. Just a movie that talks about, how far are you willing to go to be perfect? And I love movies where an artist is kind of having that internal struggle, kind of losing their mind over the course of the movie. But it has the best, I'd say, final 15 minutes, arguably ever. Like it's got one of the best conclusions to a movie that left me like fist pumping. Like I wanted to go, I just wanted to go run or something every time I watch it. It's very strange, but I love Whiplash and the music as well. I listen to it in my car a lot. I listen to basically, if you haven't picked up on anything, or if you have picked up on anything I've said, I listen to musical scores and like soundtracks basically exclusively. That's all I listen to in my car.
I mean, I couldn't. I mean, this is like, I know we talked a little bit about La La Land, earlier with.
Yeah.
I feel like there's a weird parallel because like that music in particular, like I mean, it's jazz. Like you're throwing in some jazz, obviously with Whiplash. But yeah, those scores don't like leave your mind at all because they have those scenes like cemented in your mind with that, and so like it's. I mean, just like with your documentary choice, like it's the things that like kind of it blends the two worlds where you have like your imagination and like, but also you have the visual representation of it as well, the oral and that, and so it connects the two, and I feel like it's a beautiful blend. So Whiplash, it's a great dark comedy. And
it really is.
Yeah, to do a 180. I love that movie, and like I think you're right. I think that's J.K. Simmons' best role he's ever done. I mean, obviously, the most iconic is the Spider-Man role, right? J. Jonah Jameson. But this is the movie that like this is like, oh my god, this guy is a complete asshole. And,
Yep.
But so is Miles, man. Like, but like you said, I mean, you love it though. You want to see what's going to happen next. You're on the edge of your seat the whole movie.
You are like, it's very much like the Safdie brothers movies. It feels like with that constant like urgency. Yeah. And anxiety. Yeah.
Yeah. Uncut Gems, shout out to them too.
Honorable mention.
No, keep throwing in more though. My next movie is actually a movie that I think is a pretty underrated film, just because it is just like how do they do this movie? This is a movie from 2017. I watched this in my local independent theater here, but I'm talking about Loving Vincent. It's a Vincent van Gogh film. It's animated, but it is all oil paintings. They got over 100 artists who do Van Gogh-esque paintings or in the style of Van Gogh, and they made a story about it, or like kind of the final days of Vincent van Gogh. and it is just like one of the most compelling films I've ever seen, just because it's visually like it's animated so weird, because like all those paintings are put together and like just like it's almost like stop motion, and any time you're looking at the screen there's something new to see. And it's one of those films I've seen it about 2 or 3 times but I've seen something new each and every time I've seen it. It's not necessarily like an incredible film. It's just like, for a film that has hired all these artists doing this one thing, it's like, this is incredible that the medium can transcend 2 different things and like add something like so different, but also so refreshing to, for the audience. And I think it's a film that not a lot of people have seen, but I think people should. Because if you love film and also you love art, I think it's a good combination of the two, and it's a beautiful blend of these mediums.
I haven't seen that one, but I do remember. I think it got nominated for an Oscar. I want to say, like
should have won that. Animated, it should have won that animated, but Disney, Pixar always wins.
They always do, and which it will be interesting to see at this upcoming Oscars, because I've been underwhelmed by the Disney Pixar animation this year, which is kind of a topic for another time. But
that was last year. So
I think that was last year. But like Luca and Encanto and Raya, I like Raya actually.
I like Raya too.
Topic for another time. Another time.
What's our final choice?
My final choice is a movie that, again, it should have won Best Picture, and I think it's the biggest snub, one of them, in the history of the Oscars. 2010.
Yeah, I know what
it is. I could be leading you on 2 different ways, though. I could do one movie or another. It's The Social Network. There's also Inception. Inception, honorable mention. I forgot to mention that. But Social Network. I was actually writing a final paper for a class the other day, and I was listening to the score, which won the Oscar, rightfully so, and the track called In Motion, which is like in the movie, it's the scene where Mark Zuckerberg is starting to do his little creation of like the face mash thing, and it says 10:18 p.m. He goes, "Oh, it's on," and then the score goes boom, boom, boom. No drum. It's so upbeat. If you need to get shit done, listen to that track. I implore you to do so.
Write it down.
Absolutely. In Motion from The Social Network. But I absolutely love this movie. It's one of the most well-acted, intriguing like biopics I've ever seen. It's a different directorial style for Fincher, because he's used to doing like darker thriller type movies. But I just think that Sorkin's script blended with Fincher's direction is a match made in heaven. And a fun tidbit I learned about this movie once was that for like the actual on set, they had to have the script was like 180 something page. It was like the super like long script with a lot of pages.
Sorkin,
which So like each page usually is like a minute of screen time. That's what they say for dialogue. And the movie's only 2 hours. So they had like to read Fincher and Sorkin had to like sit down with all the actors and like read it, and they had like a timer on set, so as they were filming it, like if the take wasn't fast enough, they'd have to redo it. And that's just a really interesting fact, because I mean the movie, it's constantly moving. It's fast movie. It's not one that you can like zone out when you're watching, because you have to really pick up on the dialogue. But they're constantly talking, and it's literally just people talking in a room for 2 hours, but it's one of the most entertaining movies I've ever seen, with an interesting message about like this greed and like competition and jealousy, especially among friends, with Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo. And it gives us the now like memeable scene where he's like, "Sorry, my brought at the cleaners." Like that's just the most iconic little tidbit from that movie. But I love it. Love the movie.
Yeah, that's my relationship with Chris Hurtado now is, I'm trying to build an empire and he's just trying to hold me back, I love that movie, and it's crazy. And I know, early on YouTube days, like me talking about this movie, I don't know if you remember this at all, but I used to not like this movie at all.
Really?
Yeah. Which is just so crazy to me, because I've come like, a complete, like circle on this, and like rethought about how I watch this movie. I think it's because I just really did not like at all Jesse Eisenberg. Like I could not wrap around. I mean, obviously you're not supposed to necessarily like him that much in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's just one of those things that like I've like I said, I've come around on, and I'm like, wow, this is actually just fantastic, because Fincher, Sorkin, like there's the combination of the two, and all the people involved, even Justin Timberlake.
He's actually really good in this movie. Yeah. Like he's one of the best like assholes I've ever seen in a movie, I'd say. Especially when he's like oh, here's that check. but you might not want to cash it because we close the account or whatever. And then Garfield's like that. And he's like, I like staying next to you. It makes me look so tough or whatever, or feel so tough.
Well, I mean, he's in Pop Star too, so we've brought him up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he is. He's great. You'll love it. Man. Well, I mean, how I'm going to end this on is another horror film. Actually, I don't know why, but it's just a film that stuck with me for a long time. I saw it on Netflix when it came out, but it's not as strong as Social Network, not even close. But it is The Wailing right here, and The Wailing is I'm probably going to get this Korean director's name wrong, but Na Hong Jin right here is directed by him. This feels like a film that's like parts The Exorcist, Silence of the Lambs, and then like Train to Busan, like a combination of all those films, which is really weird to say. This is like a 3-hour movie, but like everything's like every 5 to 10 minutes something batshit happens, and so it's not a movie that like it feels long. Like it's like a weird combination of atmosphere and then like lunacy, with all those things involved. And it's a movie that has never like kind of escaped my mind, and I love the ending of this movie as well. There's a lot of twists and turns in this movie, and it's really just about this the detective kind of coming to this small town, like a village, a remote village, and trying to figure out what the hell's going on. The bodies keep coming back to life, and but there's like comedy in here too, and drama, and then like just pure terror. But it is a movie that I feel like a lot of people need to check out, because it's not a movie that a lot of people talk about too often. But The Wailing, I've talked about it before on the channel, but it's just phenomenal. And you know what? I feel bad that like I didn't mention a lot of films that we could have talked about, but I really loved talking about this decade in general, and I think this is a perfect end to this series. And I just wanted to say thanks, Chris, for coming on. I think this was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This was a blast. I haven't talked about like the 2010s. I always wanted to do a video on my channel, like talking about my favorites from the decade, but I don't think I ever got around to it. So this kind of makes up for that. And it's long overdue for us to sit down and have a chat again. So I'm glad that we got to do that.
Yeah, man, it's been a while, and I hope this is the start of some other things that we can do together. And but yeah, for everyone who's watching this, where can we find you, man?
Yeah, you can find me on YouTube, Film Space Stocked. I do movie reviews, rankings, the occasional Blu-ray video. I've kind of laid off on physical media a little bit. I still love it, but so I'm not a streaming supporter. I kind of am, but you got to pick and choose with physical media nowadays.
I mean,
it's kind of
you have to. You have to live.
You have to,
right?
You really do. Yeah, it's sad, but I got that, and then Twitter @FilmStocked, Instagram is FilmStocked, Letterboxd, where I do all my movie reviews, both current and old movies. I actually have a Twitch called FilmStocked as well. So all of that, and TikTok, FilmStocked across the board. I do reviews, all the different varieties. Yeah, I'm sure it might be linked down below.
Yeah. Well, man, like like we were saying, this is a beautiful way to. It's a nice little bow for like I couldn't think of anyone else to do this with, because this was a lot of fun series, and I feel like just having a conversation about the things that, like, I don't know, it's weird. Like I could talk about at the very beginning when I talked about the 20s with another guest, like that was fun and all, but like my heart's not all necessarily there, mainly because it's something that I've discovered more later in life. But things like this, what we're talking about, these are movies that I grew up with, and these are movies that I fell in love with the medium in general, and I have a lot of good memories. And I felt like as I was growing up on YouTube, and you being one of my oldest friends on the platform, it's perfect end for it. So I want to say thank you, man, for coming on. So
yeah, thank you again for having me, dude. It was so much fun.
Well, everyone who's watching this, I'm sure we didn't talk about your favorite films. Some of them you might want to talk to us down in the comment section down below. What are some of your favorite films of the decade? I know we covered probably a lot of British and American films, but that's totally fine. You know, everyone's list is different, and I think that's what's so great about all of these decades that we've talked about. So let us know in the comment section down below what you think some of your favorite films are. Make sure to go check out Filmstocked, go check out Chris's channel, and all the other social media links down in the description down below. I want to say thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you like it. Comment down below, share, hit the notification bell, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. I'm not jonesing around.